There's a particular kind of disconnect we sometimes feel, isn't there? That almost uncanny moment. Maybe you're just going about your day, brushing your teeth, and you glance up
Yeah.
in the mirror.
Yeah.
You see your own face,
Yeah.
the familiar lines. But for just a flicker, it feels like a stranger looking back. The shape is right, but the soul feels a little, I don't know, missing.
Mm-hmm. That sense of unfamiliarity in the familiar, it's quite unsettling.
Exactly. And today we're diving deep into that exact feeling, especially for people navigating the profound journey of weight loss. We tend to fixate on the physical side, right? Especially now with powerful new tools like Semaglutide, these GLP-1 agonists that really shift hunger signals. But what about the internal shifts, the stuff happening deeper down? It's not just the body changing, it's how our identity, our sense of self, grapples with that change.
Absolutely. That's the often missed piece of the puzzle.
So our mission today is to explore this whole journey. We're drawing on insights from Dan Hollis, a guide who helps people navigate what he calls the space between hunger and healing. We want to unpack the surprising challenges that pop up after the physical weight loss and look at the quiet, powerful work of rebuilding your own story.
And what's really fascinating, I think, about Dan's approach is how it redefines success. It's not just about the scale. Most programs, they stop at the physical, but his work highlights that those changes, yeah, they're significant, but they're really just the first chapter.
Right, chapter 1A.
The deeper work, the stuff that lasts, starts in those next chapters, navigating that complex emotional, psychological landscape when your outside doesn't match your inside anymore.
That internal narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah, that clarity is so crucial. And sometimes the best way to get it is through a story. Let's talk about Adrienne. Her story really brings this whole idea to life. She was 53, hadn't taken a full-body photo in like 12 years, had the gold jeans stashed away, and as our source put it, a heart full of hesitations.
Sounds familiar for many people, I imagine.
Totally. And for months, things were going great with semaglutide, appetite down, knees felt better, clothes were, quote, whispering instead of screaming.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a perfect outcome, right? The triumph everyone hopes for.
The expected win.
But then came what Dan Hollis calls her toothpaste moment. One morning, same routine, brushing her teeth.
Yeah.
She looked up, and she just didn't recognize the woman in the mirror. Face thinner, lines sharper, eyes looking, as she said, somehow older and newer at the same time.
Wow.
She told Dan later, I knew it was me, but I didn't feel like I belonged to her. It wasn't a win, it felt like a disappearance. A really profound sense of not belonging in her own skin.
And this is exactly what Dan Hollis calls identity lag. He puts it so simply. Your body can change faster than your story. And when that happens, the soul gets confused.
Okay, let's dig into that. Identity lag. So it's like your physical self sprints ahead, and your internal self, your story about who you are, is still back at the starting line trying to catch up.
Pretty much, yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Because most people, myself included, we assume the hard part is losing the weight. The struggle, the diet, the exercise. But Dan's saying the real crisis, the really tricky bit, can actually happen after that.
Exactly. It's that moment looking in the mirror and thinking, who is that? Because your internal map hasn't updated. This is the point where, as he says, the hunger fades, when the rituals dissolve, when the armor drops, the emotional armor may be built around a larger body, and you're left standing there, unrecognizable, even to yourself.
Wow. And what's really striking is that Adrienne wasn't mourning the pounds she lost.
No, not the weight itself.
She was mourning the version of herself who had carried them.
That's such a crucial distinction. It's about the identity that was tied to that body.
And think about how specific, how practiced that version was. The source says she was the one who had known exactly how to manage a room with a joke, which sweaters covered the most and which apologies sounded casual.
Yeah.
She was good at being her old self. It was familiar, maybe even comfortable in its own way.
Right. She had strategies. She knew how to navigate the world as that person. That identity felt, well, secure.
And now, poof, that self is receding. And she's left as a body in transition and a mind without a map. That leaves this huge, unsettling vacuum, doesn't it?
It really does. A profound void. The old self, with all its coping mechanisms, its ways of being, it's not quite relevant anymore. But the new self hasn't fully formed yet. It hasn't found its footing.
So it needs a different kind of support, right? Beyond just diet tips.
Absolutely. And that's where Dan's approach differed. He didn't rush in with quick fixes or platitudes. He just listened. Became like a mirror for her, reflecting what she was actually feeling and ready to process about this deep internal shift.
Okay, so Adrienne's toothpaste moment shows us this identity lag, this challenge of the after. But how does Dan Hollis see the medication itself, semaglutide and all this? He has a really interesting take.
He does. It's quite powerful.
He says, semaglutide doesn't fix you. It gives you space to fix yourself.
Mm-hmm. The space.
He uses this analogy like a builder. Semaglutide is like good lumber. It's not the house, it's not the foundation, but it's the kind of material that makes building possible if you're ready to do the work.
That's the key part, isn't it, if you're ready? It highlights that the medication is a tool, a powerful one, but its true function is creating a pause, a quiet window. It doesn't magically fix the underlying stuff, but it quiets that persistent physical hunger noise that's been so loud for so many.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me.
Yeah.
Because you think relief from cravings. That's the goal. That's the win. But Dan suggests it's actually the starting gun for a startling new reality. Why is it so disorienting, maybe even painful, when the craving just stops?
Well, think about it. As Dan puts it, when the cravings stop, the truth begins.
The truth. Okay.
And that truth can be uncomfortable because what often follows is this period of sometimes genuine grief and disorientation. For so many people, he says, food was the plan. It was the rhythm. It was the escape hatch.
Ah, right. Not just fuel.
Not just fuel at all. It was the go-to coping mechanism for stress, boredom, loneliness, deeper emotions you didn't want to face. So when that primary coping tool is suddenly effectively removed, well, all those underlying issues tend to surface.
They bubble up.
Exactly. They demand new strategies, and it reveals this void, this space that now needs to be consciously, intentionally filled with something else.
So the real work, the deeper work, starts after the appetite quiets down. Facing why we turn to food in the first place.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. And that instability, that disorientation you mentioned, that must be why Dan Hollis stresses community and support so much. It's not just a solo mission.
Precisely. He makes a really stark point. Most people don't fail because the medication doesn't work. They fail because they were alone.
Wow, that hits hard.
It does. And it raises that critical question. Okay, the old self is fading, but no one told you how to be someone new. How do you navigate that?
Right. Where's the instruction manual for that transformation?
There isn't one, generally. And that's the core challenge. The old rhythms are gone, you look different, feel different, but there's no built-in guide for the emotional and social side. This is where his idea of scaffolding comes in. And he's not talking about, inspirational quotes on Instagram.
Not just cheerleading.
No, he means actual neurobiological replacement structures, rituals, rhythm, routines, the lattice that keeps people upright when the chemistry wobbles. He's very clear. Support isn't optional. It's neurobiological scaffolding.
Neurobiological scaffolding. Okay, that's a heck of a phrase. It sounds solid, like actual construction. So it's not just about willpower then. It's about intentionally building new internal structures. Can you elaborate a bit on what that actually means? Like, are we literally rewiring our brains?
In a very real sense, yes. Think of it less like a metaphor and more like, brain training. Old habits, like using food for comfort, created really strong reinforced pathways in the brain, right?
Like deep grooves.
Exactly. So when semaglutide helps quiet that habit, it leaves a kind of neurological vacuum. The old pathway is less active, but there's nothing solid to replace it yet. Scaffolding is about consciously, consistently building new supportive pathways, new automatic responses to stress, new comfort strategies, new routines. So the brain doesn't just snap back to the old familiar groove when life gets tough. It's proactive work.
Okay, that clicks. It's like building new roads in the brain so you don't keep taking the old, worn-out one.
Precisely. Reinforced by consistent practice and, crucially, relationships and community support.
It really is a human architecture story then. Rebuilding agency, reframing meaning, relearning momentum, sometimes from scratch. And for Adrian, Dan didn't focus on the scale. He worked not on pounds, but on language. They started renaming things.
Which sounds simple, but the impact is huge. They didn't just tweak words, they redefined core concepts for her. Shame became memory. Instead of something current and active, it's part of the past. Control became curiosity. Less about restriction, more about exploration. Discipline became alignment. Finding what truly fits.
Wow, shifting the whole frame.
Yeah, and he helped her cultivate permission. Permission to not know who she was yet. Permission to feel awkward in that in-between phase. Permission to build a new story without feeling like she had to, burn the old one down entirely.
That's huge. Giving yourself grace in the messy middle.
Exactly. So instead of fighting the emptiness or the confusion, she got tools to observe it, understand it, and then thoughtfully, gradually fill it. The source notes the mirror didn't magically change overnight, But Adrienne stood there longer. She didn't flinch away, didn't force a smile yet, but that is something.
That pause, that ability to just be with the reflection without recoiling, that feels like a massive win.
It's a subtle but incredibly profound shift towards self-acceptance, towards agency.
It really shows that the true transformation is often in those quiet internal shifts, isn't it? Not just the dramatic before and after photos. Which brings us back to Dan Hollis's definition of success. He says, this journey isn't about eating less, it's about living more.
That's the ultimate goal.
So what does this really mean for you listening? The win condition isn't just a number. It's about feeling alive enough, feeling equipped enough to stop measuring your whole life by food and actually engage with, well,
Yeah.
life itself.
That's the heart of it. And this connects directly to his most sobering, but also maybe most empowering diagnosis. Weight loss is biology. Staying there is narrative.
Biology versus narrative, okay?
It argues that many people regain weight not because the medication failed or their biology somehow betrayed them, but because they lose the weight, but they never rewrite their story. They just go quiet, and without that new narrative solidifying, eventually, the old patterns, the old story, pulls them back.
They just go quiet. That phrase is chilling. That silence becomes a void, and the old narrative just rushes back in to fill it.
It seems to be a common pattern. He even says people don't relapse into hunger. They relapse into confusion. It's not primarily a physical failure. It's a disorientation of the self.
A crisis of identity, not just appetite.
Exactly.
Well,
Which raises that vital question, how do we stop that silence, that confusion, from turning into a relapse? Dan's work is about proactively filling that space the medication creates. Filling it with robust structure, real community, a consciously defined identity, a sense of purpose, and giving people the time and support needed to integrate all these massive changes. He acts as a guide.
not giving answers, necessarily.
More asking better questions, sitting with people in that uncomfortable tension of transformation and walking beside you as you build that new self.
It's such a different model from the usual diet world, which is often so black and white. You're either succeeding or failing. But Dan Hollis reframes failure completely. This really struck me. He says, failure isn't the end. It's a message,
Data.
a moment of feedback. And sometimes it's the most honest conversation you'll ever have with yourself.
Powerful, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, let's unpack that. So failure isn't weakness. It's information, a data point for the journey.
Absolutely. He teaches that a relapse or a stumble isn't some kind of betrayal of your progress. It's not a moral failing. Often it's simply the brain asking for the old familiar rhythm. It's searching for those old, well-worn neural pathways we talked about. It's almost an automatic process.
Like muscle memory, but for the brain's coping mechanisms.
Exactly. And his warning follows from that. Most people aren't failing semaglutide. They're failing to prepare for what comes after it. The real challenge isn't just taking the medication. It's equipping people for the complex psychological and emotional terrain after the weight comes off.
That shifts everything. It's about being prepared, building those new structures, not just hoping for perfect adherence. So if failure is feedback, how does he help people handle the shame? Because setbacks often come with a huge dose of self-blame.
That's crucial. He tackles shame head on. He says, the shame isn't in failing. The shame is in pretending you're supposed to be perfect.
Oof. Yeah, that perfection myth is so damaging.
Totally. And he defines grace not as letting yourself off the hook, but as something actively built when you respond to a stumble by reaching for a better tool instead of reaching for blame. It's about fostering curiosity. Okay, what happened there? What did I need in that moment? What new strategy or support can I build? Instead of judgment. Learning how to fail forward, as he puts it.
Fail forward with compassion and curiosity. I like that.
It reframes the entire experience from pass fail to learning and adapting.
Wow. What an incredible deep dive we've taken today. We've gone from that uncanny mirror moment through identity lag into neurobiological scaffolding and the profound work of rewriting your own narrative. The core idea seems really clear now. This kind of transformation, especially with tools like Semaglutide, it's so much less about just physical loss and so much more about finding a new way to belong to yourself, actively rebuilding your identity, consciously writing a new story for who you are becoming.
That's the essence of it. Biology is the start, narrative is the staying power.
So if you've ever had that feeling, looking in the mirror, the shape is right, but the soul feels missing. If your reflection has sometimes felt more like a stranger than a familiar home, just remember, you're definitely not alone in that. You're simply in that part of the story, maybe the messy middle part, where you have this incredible, profound opportunity to belong to yourself again. Truly, on your own terms.
Definitely an invitation, really.
It is. So the final thought we want to leave you with today is this. What new story are you ready, or maybe getting ready, to begin writing for yourself? Not just for your body, but for the person you're becoming in that new, potentially confusing, but ultimately expansive space.